Dylan Mulvaney blasts Bud Light in a new video. Anheuser Busch responds. The Supreme Court comes out with some amazing opinions, and Biden just keeps acting like Biden. All of that and more on today's episode of Speechless, The Daily Show. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Kev Phares, and we're going to cover everything that I just laid out. But first, please remember to like, subscribe, and share this video. And let me know in the comments what you think about anything we're talking about here. I really do appreciate you guys tuning in on my new Daily Show series that we're doing here. But let's just get right on into it. So let's start off with Dylan Mulvaney. So Dylan Mulvaney, the controversial transgender influencer, blasted Bud Light in a video Thursday afternoon, so last evening, for not coming to his defense after the company paid marketing engagement with him blew up in their faces, causing Anheuser Busch to lose billions of dollars in market value, which obviously I don't need to recap the whole story. We pretty much know all about that. But why don't we just watch this video? We'll react to it together.
Hi. One thing I will not tolerate people saying about me is that I don't like beer, because I love beer and I always have. I built my platform on being honest with you, and what I'm about to tell you might sound like old news, but you know that feeling when you have something uncomfy, like
Build his platform with being honest with you, but isn't even honest with himself. Think about that.
on your chest? Well, that's how I feel right now. So this feels like the right thing to do. I took a brand deal with a company that I loved, and I posted a sponsored video to my page. And it must have been a slow news week, because the way that this ad got blown up, you would have thought I was like on a billboard or on a TV commercial or something major. But no, it was just an Instagram video. And the wildest part is that they also sent me one can with my face on it. You might have seen it.
I do want to agree real quick with Dylan here. Honestly, this blew up a lot more than I ever would have expected it to. I mean, it was like he said, one post that turned into something way bigger. And so I didn't expect it. We're almost 3 months past when this all came out, and the boycott is still raging. I'm happy about it. I think that we should, as conservatives, be pushing for companies to be representative of what their consumer believes in and expect more from our companies. But I will agree. I mean, it did blow up a lot more than even I expected it to.
And funny story, I had the can around my house, but then I realized, wait, I need to protect this can. So I hid it somewhere, and now I can't find it because I hid it so well. But when I do find it, I feel like it needs to go in a museum, preferably behind bulletproof glass.
I'm still in agreement there, Dill.
And you might be thinking, Dylan, why bring it up now? I'm bringing it up because what transpired from that video was more bullying and transphobia than I could have ever imagined.
And that's where you lost me. No, it wasn't bullying and transphobia. Dylan, here's the thing, is that this shows how self-centered this person is to an extent, because it's really not even about you, Dylan. It very, very, very minuscule. It's about what you are representing and what Bud Light did to push a representation that was not that of their consumer. But let's keep watching.
And I should have made this video months ago, but I didn't. And I was scared, and I was scared of more backlash, and I felt personally guilty for what transpired. So I patiently waited for things to get better. But surprise, they haven't really. And I was waiting for the brand to reach out to me, but they never did. And for months now, I've been scared to leave my house.
That's really actually surprising, is the fact that Bud Light never even reached out and said anything. That's really surprising to me.
I have been ridiculed in public. I've been followed, and I have felt a loneliness that I wouldn't wish on anyone.
Okay, a few things here. First, Dylan is playing the victim like a pro, honestly. First off, okay, so if I condemn any type of stalking, threats, violence, anything like that, but Dylan, you kind of have to expect, when you put yourself in the public eye and you are doing so with a topic that is as controversial as the transgender ideology, you have to kind of expect some of that ridicule. I get ridiculed. I've had people say awful things to me. I've had certain threats from people for some of the things I say. That's something you kind of expect. And you have to be able to brush it off. Because if you want to stand for what, like, I don't agree with you, Dylan, but if you want to stand for something that is controversial, undoubtedly, whether you like it or not, it's controversial. You have to be able to expect some of that ridicule and distaste from people. Just saying. But you're playing the victim like a pro. I'll give you that.
And I'm not telling you this because I want your pity. I am telling you this because if this is my experience from a very privileged perspective, know that it is much, much worse for other trans people. For a company to hire a trans person and then not publicly stand by them is worse, in my opinion, than not hiring a trans person at all, because it gives customers permission to be as transphobic and hateful as they want. And the hate doesn't end with me. It has serious and grave consequences for the rest of our community. And you know, we're customers too. I know a lot of trans and queer people who love beer, and I have some lesbian friends who could drink some of those haters under the table. But to turn a blind eye and pretend everything is okay, it just isn't an option right now. And you might say, but Dylan, I don't want to get political. Babe, supporting trans people, it shouldn't be political. There should be nothing controversial or divisive about working with us.
It's not, okay, again, it's not about, the reason why it's controversial is because you are pushing a lie, a biological lie, that men can become women and women can become men. That's why it's controversial. And I feel like Dylan doesn't really get that. And I feel like a lot of people don't get that. That's what people are fed up with, along with the fact that a lot of this ideology is also being pushed onto children. And people don't want it anywhere, like, super visibly in society if it's going to be pushed onto children too. And so that's why it has become so controversial. There is one thing, though, that I kind of agree with Dylan on to an extent, that he said was that it's interesting that, or it's a problem that Bud Light didn't become majorly pro-trans and everything when people started boycotting. I think that what Bud Light should have done is one or the other. Bud Light has just been too wishy-washy right now. They're trying to be like, well, beer's for everybody. We're gonna try to cater to both the conservatives that are boycotting to us, but also the LGBTQ people. But now everybody's just mad at them. Everybody. Because they're not picking a side. You decided to have a marketing campaign that picked a side, but then when directly asked, I mean, we played yesterday on the show, I played that interview where the guy was flat out asked, where do you stand on queer rights? And he didn't answer the question. And so that's the issue. And so I kind of agree with Dylan. It's a problem. The problem Bud Light has right now is the fact that they pushed a marketing campaign that picked a side, but now when asked to clarify what side they're picking, they're being wishy-washy on it. And so I'd rather have a Bud Light that comes out and says, nope, we're 100% for the trans community. That is what we want. That's the consumer base we're going for now. That is where I'd rather have that than this one that's like, well, like, but we still want the people that don't really support that. But we also want the people that do support. They're being too wishy-washy. You picked a side on one of the most controversial topics in America and decided to, and are now trying to backtrack, but not too much. It's like if you came out and said, well, we are pro-choice. But then we're like, oh, wait. But we're also like pro the choice to be pro-life. It's like, pick a side. Pick a side at this point, right? And to me, I would even say at this point, Bud Light, just go all in. Just go all in with the lefty progressive agenda, because you've pretty much lost anybody who used to support you that doesn't support that agenda. Just saying, go all in.
And I know it's possible because I've worked with some fantastic companies who care, but caring about the LGBTQ plus community requires a lot more than just a donation somewhere during Pride Month. And all this to say, bottom line is that if you follow me, if I've made you smile, if you care about me, I need you to care about every trans person.
You know, he even hits on another thing that I also kind of agree with a little bit, is the fact that a lot of these companies do performative activism. Pride Month comes and they try to pay their respect or they try to pay off their dues to the LGBTQ community by pledging something during Pride Month. And then the rest of the time, it's like, it doesn't even, nope, we don't care. We don't care. It's the same thing that happened during all the BLM riots. They posted the black square so that when the proverbial gods of the BLM rioters or the LGBTQ communities came by, they would pass by their house and wouldn't take their firstborn son. That's what they do. It's performative. It's not because they actually care about anything. It's so that BlackRock and Vanguard keep investing in them and so that they don't get ridiculed in the public square for not being woke enough. So, yeah, I kind of agree with you to an extent. And now I don't want these companies to go full woke and be progressive, but if you're gonna do it, be all in. Be forthright with your consumer about what you stand for.
And I need you to support us, and I need you to stand by us. And hey, it's still Pride Month. So I'm going to celebrate being alive, and I'm going to celebrate the trans people in my life and the ones I haven't met yet. And I'm going to celebrate the fact that no matter how many thousands of horrible messages or news anchors misgendering me or companies going silent.
He's talking about me, the misgendering. It's not misgendering. I'm calling you by the pronouns that you were born with. Because you can't change your gender, but okay.
That I can look in the mirror and see the woman that I am and that I love being.
Check the mirror again, please.
And I know you were probably here for the tea of it all, but I would love for something productive to come from this. So there is a link in my bio to the Trans Law Center, who is doing some wonderful work if you have the means to donate. And to the good people out there, I love ya. I really do. And cheers, but only if you're of legal drinking age. Okay. I love you. Bye.
Well, at least I know that Dylan loves me. I appreciate that. And yes, only drink if you are of legal drinking age. But overall, again, this is just Dylan. I really think that Dylan is a little bit, and I think Dylan's a little bit of an attention whore. That's what I think it is. Dylan honestly is probably trying to capitalize on this as much as he can. Because I had no idea who Dylan Mulvaney was before any of this. Many of you probably had no idea who Dylan Mulvaney was before any of this. And so this has honestly skyrocketed him to be like the number one person people think of when they think of trans activists. Yes, it was his likeness that tanked one of the most iconic Americana brands. But hey, anything for a view, right? That's what it seems like. Well, Anheuser Busch decided to respond to this, as Dylan obviously called them out, saying, hey, you have not stood beside me. And Anheuser Busch responded saying in a statement, quote, as we've said, we remain committed to the programs and partnerships we have forged over decades with organizations across a number of communities, including those in the LGBTQ plus community. The privacy and safety of our employees and our partners is always our top priority. As we move forward, we will focus on what we do best, brewing great beer for everyone and earning our place in moments that matter to our consumers. So once again, they're being wishy-washy. They've continued to be wishy-washy. No, conservatives, don't hold your breath for an apology. And to any LGBTQ members out there, I'm kind of with you. If Bud Light should pick a side, period. So, but don't hold your breath for them to come and say and wave the pride flag and say, we are 100% always with you. That's not what they're going to do. They have dug their grave, and it's so far deep that they, no matter how hard they try, will not be able to climb back out from it entirely. It's not going to happen. But that is exactly what Bud Light has done. And Dylan Mulvaney, honestly, you have every right to be mad at them, honestly. Like, I agree with you on that. You have every right to be mad at them because they should choose a side at this point, in my opinion. But let's move on. We're going to move on to the Supreme Court now. I know this episode might seem a little bit comparable to that yesterday's, but that's because Bud Light made this big news now, and the Supreme Court came out with some amazing decisions. So we're going to start off with the Supreme Court offered an opinion on Biden's attempt to provide $430 billion in student loan forgiveness. Out of the Daily Wire, in a stinging defeat for the Biden administration, the United States Supreme Court ruled today that Friday, that the COVID-era HEROES Act did not give the White House authority to unilaterally forgive federally subsidized student loans. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote in the 6-3 majority saying the secretary asserts that the HEROES Act grants him the authority to cancel $430 billion of student loan principal, but it does not. We hold today that the act allows secretary to, quote, waive or modify existing statutory or regulatory provisions applicable to financial assistance programs under the Education Act, not to rewrite that statute from the ground up. Period. Basically saying you do not have the authority to do what you are trying to do. And of course, the liberals got so angry about this, and Biden responded to this in such a Biden way. So he came out just a few hours ago and talked about his plan and what he thinks the real issue is and what he plans on doing moving forward. So let's watch that video.
Notice had been sent out to people about the relief they were eligible for. 16 million people. 16 million people had already been approved. The money was literally about to go out the door. And then Republican elected officials and special interests stepped in. They said, no, literally snatching from the hands of millions of Americans thousands of dollars in student debt relief that was about to change their lives. You know, these Republican officials just couldn't bear the thought of providing relief for working class, middle class Americans. Republican state officials sued my administration, attempting to block relief, including millions of their own constituents. Republicans in Congress voted to overturn the plan. I think every one. I don't think I had any Republican votes for this plan. At the same time, think about this. We all supported the Paycheck Protection Program. Remember PPP?
So Biden just blames Republicans. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember, but I remember when Biden said he was going to be the unifying president. But he actually blatantly comes out and says, Republicans snatched this from the middle class and the working class. That's what he says. The unifying president for you, everybody. That is what he has to say to everybody out there. And then he goes on to say that he's going to try other ways to provide relief to people with student loans. And he also did say, I didn't give any false hope. The Republicans snatched away the hope that they were given. I think you kind of did give a false hope, Biden, because I don't actually believe that you at any point thought that this was going to go through. You didn't have the procedure. So this brings me to the two biggest issues with the student loan forgiveness plan, specifically this one that was struck down by the court today. So the first is procedural. Look, if you really want to offer this student loan forgiveness and give away $430 billion of taxpayer money to forgive debt that people took on willingly, then this should be something that goes through a budget through Congress. But Biden knew that he did not have congressional support. So he tried to do a back alley deal way of getting this pushed through that ended up 6 Republican states sued. And there was 2 lawsuits. One was struck down by the court saying that it didn't have standing. The other one was accepted. The dissenting opinion argued that even the second one did not have standing based on the idea of having injury presented. But the majority held that they did have standing. There was injury, and the 6 Republican states were right that the HEROES Act did not provide the authority for President Biden to hand out $430 billion of your money. Sucks. Maybe you should have done it the right way, Biden. Go through Congress. And again, I'm not in agreement with it. But he knew he couldn't get it passed through Congress. So that's why he tried to do the back alleyway. But then this is the bigger issue with the entire idea of student loan forgiveness, even if it went through Congress. Here's why it's an issue, is because it's a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. It doesn't actually solve the problem. Look, I'm in total agreement. The cost of college is way too high. I've talked about this before. Back when my parents went to college, the cost of a college degree was significantly less, and the value of it was much higher. Because less people were going to college, the value of a degree was higher and it cost significantly less. Well, since then, a lot more people have started going to college, and the free market response to a higher demand is a higher price. So more people are going to college. We now offer more degrees, some of which are absolutely useless, like gender studies and certain certain theater ones and stuff like that, where it's really not, there's other ways that you could go into that field without getting a college degree, but instead you're going to shell out $100,000, if not more, for that degree. But anyways, now more people are going to college. The degrees cost more, and thus the degrees are worth less. If more people are going to college, more people are getting degrees, then there is an inflation on the value of a degree, and you're paying more for less. That's an issue. And it's cost so much now where pretty much anybody has to go into significant debt to go to college unless you have parents that are willing to help or some other circumstance comparable. And so, yes, the exuberant amount of student loans is an issue. It is an issue. But just shelling out money for the people that currently owe debt does not solve the problem for the millions of other young Americans that are going to go to college and then also be collecting debt. It's not going to solve that problem in any way, shape, or form. And so shelling out that money is a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. It doesn't do anything to solve the problem. It has an immediate response. That's what the Democrats do. Just throw money at it. That'll solve the issue. No, it won't. We need to talk about colleges lowering costs, at least at the public university level. What are things that we could cut? Could we cut certain departments? Do administrators need to be making that much money? Ask those questions instead of just saying, let's shell out money from the federal government. Enable states to regulate what their public universities charge for students. There's a lot of other solutions that you can come up with besides throw money at it and hope it goes away. What he's really trying to do with the student loan forgiveness plan that he had is, in the short term, buy votes. He's essentially trying to buy votes from people using your money. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? We have a federal government that will throw political prisoners or political opponents in prison, or try to, and they'll try to buy votes using your dollar. That's what Biden is basically trying to do. So those are the two biggest issues with this. It's procedural, and it doesn't solve the problem. And then Biden tries to blame Republicans, being a divisive president, despite trying to say that he's a unifying president. He blames Republicans. Republicans snatched it away. That's what he says, or at least that's what was written for him on the teleprompter. But let's go on to the next case that the Supreme Court brought up today. It has to do with a gay website. So this is the case here was 303 Creative LLC versus Elena's, and it was basically a website for creating for weddings, a wedding website creation business that said that they would not create a website for a gay couple. This went to court based on anti-discrimination laws that were put into place in, I believe, Colorado. And basically the whole argument was, well, you cannot discriminate against people based on their sexuality. And this just reminded me a lot of this gay bakery case that was from like 5-6 years ago. Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado Civil Rights Commission, so what happened in that case is you had the owner of a cake shop that was asked to bake a gay wedding cake. Well, cakes were his main thing. He offered to make cupcakes, other things, but he said he would not make a cake because that was his primary art form, and he's a Christian. And he had shown consistently that he only did cakes that were okay within the Bible. He didn't make cakes for Halloween. He didn't make cakes that showed drinking excessively, anything like that. And so the court ruled for his specific case that his free speech was protected because in the past he had shown that he was strictly Christian. And so his free speech took precedent over the anti-discrimination laws. Well, in this case, it kind of expanded that, the 303 Creative, the website case. It expanded that by basically saying you have the right to deny somebody because of your values under the First Amendment to deny business to somebody based on your First Amendment right. So so it's arguing free speech cannot be infringed. Now, I'm going to break all that down, but I do want to talk real quick about, in the dissenting opinion, Justice Sonia Sotomayor made a glaring mistake by referencing the Pulse nightclub shooting. So this was a shooting that happened in Florida a few years ago, one of the largest or biggest mass shootings in United States history, which I believe 49 people were killed, and it was at a gay nightclub. And she mislabeled this shooting as a hate crime. This is out of Fox News. Sotomayor argued that the massacre was an instance of anti-LGBTQ hate. She said, quote, a social system of discrimination created an environment in which LGBT people are unsafe, who could forget the Pulse nightclub massacre, the second deadliest mass shooting in United States history. Despite Sotomayor's assertion, however, the FBI and other law enforcement were unable to verify any claims that the shooter was gay, frequented gay bars, or even knew that the Pulse nightclub was a gay bar. The shooter's final selection of the Pulse nightclub as his target appears to have been made based on the lack of security, not because it was a gay nightclub, and made a last-minute decision. According to court and phone records that emerged in a case against the shooter's widow, who was put on trial for allegedly aiding and abetting her late husband. So this is what the left does, right? Justice Sonia Sotomayor mislabeled this as a hate crime when talking, and then also tried to further her argument, claiming that because of that instance of anti-LGBTQ hate and other ones that she listed, that allowing for a business to deny service based on their values would create further LGBTQ hate and violence. But she pushed a false narrative, just like what the liberal media does. You push a false narrative, you say something enough, people will believe it, and they'll continue to push that lie. That's what happened with Russia, right? If you just keep saying that Trump colluded with Russia, eventually half the population will believe it. And they still push that lie today, even though there's plenty of reports. We have the Durham report, and we have the most recent one that came out that show that Trump did not collude with Russia. And so that's exactly what Sonia Sotomayor was trying to do in her dissenting opinion. I mean, maybe it was an honest mistake and she just assumed, but she could have also just been like a lot of other liberals where you assume because something happened to a gay person, it was automatically a hate crime. That it's just a blanket assumption. And she even did this when she knew she was losing. She was writing the dissenting opinion. So it's crazy. But Justice Gorsuch lambasted Sotomayor's dissent, saying, quote, "It reimagines the facts from top to bottom and fails to answer the fundamental question. Can a state force someone who provides her own expensive services to abandon her conscience and speak its preferred message instead? Can the government force you to abandon your values and serve somebody even though it doesn't align?" So let's break this down again. Or just break it down, period. It's all about free speech. And not just free speech, freedom of expression, really, and ownership. That's what this is about. It's not about discriminating against LGBTQ people. Justice Gorsuch said it perfectly. The real issue, the real question on the table is, can the government force someone who provides her own expensive services to abandon her conscience and speak its preferred message instead? That's the real question. It has nothing to do with LGBTQ people. And a lefty put out a tweet, and he was trying to own conservatives with it. I know that for a fact, but a lefty put out this tweet that says, "What today's Supreme Court rulings mean for the LGBTQ community and its supporters. Someone walks into your business with a MAGA hat on, no service. Someone walks in with a gun hanging from their hip, no service. Someone who walks in wearing transphobic merch, no service. Someone walks in with Jesus loves me on their shirt, no service. Someone walks in wearing the Confederate flag, no service. It's time to fight fire with fire." Little did this lefty expect, I actually agree with him. I agree with him. I really do. Now, I'm not advocating for businesses to deny service to anyone, by the way. A business's primary function, at least in my opinion and in most people's opinion, is to generate revenue, to make money. And so that means it is not in their best interest to deny anybody service. It wouldn't be. Because you want to make money if you deny service, one, that says, okay, I'm not going to take your money, but two, they're going to go tell their friends, well, they didn't accept me here for this, and so that's more business you could lose. I don't think it's a good idea for anybody to deny service. However, as businesses become increasingly political, like Bud Light, we just talked about, Target, Adidas, and many more, and people boycott them on the basis of values, then why can't businesses do the inverse? If the consumer has a right to boycott a business, to not patronize a business that doesn't align with their values, why can't a business deny service for the same reason? It would only make sense. So sure, deny service to gays, conservatives, Christians, people who carry. Deny service. I don't care. I think go for it. Do it. Push your values as a business if that's what you want to do. You own that business. do it. I wouldn't advise it from a business standpoint. I think it's awful business. But why should the government have the right to tell you what you can and can't do with your business? Preach your values, go for it. But look how that turned out with Bud Light. That's really the way I see it on either side. I wish businesses didn't push a political agenda, but if you're going to, go all in. Do it. Do it. So those are two great Supreme Court cases that came down. I really think a win for freedom of expression and a win for the taxpayer. But they're both major losses for President Biden. So this week has just been a miserable loss for President Biden. And before I get into my next story, I do want to say, be ready, everybody, because with the affirmative action case yesterday, with the business one that I just laid out, with the college student loan forgiveness one, the left is going to come for the Supreme Court. As of right now, barring kind of the House of Representatives, the only real majority, the only real conservative power in our federal government is the judicial branch. The executive is owned by Biden. The legislative is owned by kind of the Democrats and a little bit the Republicans, but the judicial branch is entirely conservative. Well, not entirely. It's about 6-3 is about what the split is, but we have majority. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the ideas of court packing or term limits on justices, things like that, start to come up again. I think those conversations could come up, and I might lay out some of those arguments in a different video at some point, but be ready for that. But like I said, this week has just been a miserable loss for President Biden, and this next story puts the icing on the cake. I think it's really funny, and it's a perfect, honestly, it is a perfect example of what President Biden's administration looks like to everybody in our country and even across the world. So President Biden goes on MSNBC and awkwardly walked off the set like before the interview was really even over. So let's take a look. I got the video right here. Let's watch President Biden be President Biden.
Free American, whether they voted for me or not.
Well, and the ones that didn't vote for your bills but run on them.
That's
too.
right.
Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate
it's great to have you. It's
Thank
great
you.
to have
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Don't go anywhere. It's a very exciting day around here. We'll have reaction and analysis to everything we just heard from the president.
So I think the absolute funniest part of that is as she's saying, don't go anywhere, Biden just starts walking off the set. And so for anybody who doesn't know, but you probably, I mean, if you've ever watched news before, when they do a sit down interview like that, usually what happens is they close out the segment and then it's assumed, and this is how it really happens. It's assumed that after the segment is over, after they cut to commercial, then the guest stands up and leaves and you go away. And then they redo the set and they figure out what they're doing for the next segment. But weirdly, Biden just walks off in the middle of it. And it raises some questions. First off, like, was he rushing somewhere? Did he have to go to the bathroom? Did he have to go take a poop? I don't know. Did he have some ice cream waiting off set that was melting and he needed to get to it? Some chocolate chip or something, whatever his favorite is? What was he doing? But again, to wrap this all, this is just perfectly emblematic of his presidency. Look, I said yesterday, when it comes to affirmative action, 62% of Americans, according to Reuters, do not support race-based admissions for colleges. But he doesn't care. He still wants affirmative action. He still pushes for it. He's unaware. In this instance, and in multiple instances, he is tone deaf. He walks off weirdly from here. He obviously does not have the cognitive ability to really be president. He's straight up been asked about that and fumbled in his answer. And he's just simply awkward. He's awkward. He sniffs children. He walks off set at weird times. He doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't know where he is. He calls out to congressmen that have actually passed away. Yeah, all true stories, all things that have actually happened. So this is just perfectly emblematic of who President Biden is. So everybody, I hope you are interested in these stories. I hope that you like them. Please, please, please let me know what you think in the comments. What did you think about student loan forgiveness? Did you go to college? Do you support having your student loans forgiven entirely? If you owned a business, do you think that you would deny service to somebody based on who they are? What do you think about Dylan Mulvaney going after Bud Light? Do you think businesses should actually go all in if they're going to make a political reference? What do you think? Leave it in the comments. Let me know. And please, please, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and share. Everybody, that's all I got for you today. But tune in. I got my live show on Sunday from 3 to 5 p.m. I want to know what you guys have think about all that. I might cover some of the same topics. We can do some live discussion about all that. Tune in on Sundays from 3 to 5 for Speechless, the radio show. And we'll be back then with more Speechless on Cities 92.9 and on YouTube. Thanks for watching The Daily Show.